America. I believe we can build on the progress we've made and continue to fight for new jobs and new opportunity and new security for the middle class. I believe we can keep the promise of our founders, the idea that if you're willing to work hard, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or what you look like or who you love. You can make it here in America if you're willing to try. The freedom which so many Americans have fought for and died for come with responsibilities as well as rights. And among those are love and charity and duty and patriotism. That's what makes America great. So, that was President Obama in his acceptance speech of becoming the president for the second time in the States a few months ago. And I wanted to start with this quote because it sort of says something about a view of the world. And I've been trying to think, well, what is the world? The theme of this retreat is World Teacher. So what is the world? How do you explain the world? It's quite a difficult thing to talk about, actually, the world. But I thought I'd start with this excerpt from his speech because I think it illustrates like a fairly dominant or predominant view that is at large in our minds and in our world that we live in at the moment. Obviously it's not the only view, but I would say it's like the predominant view, the moving force of our world as it is at the moment. And I wanted to bring this in because I also want to talk about the Buddha. And I want to talk about, well, what does the Buddha say about the world? If the Buddha is saying anything, it needs to be relevant to us in this world, in this life, at the moment. So what I want to do in this talk is kind of present the world and then present something of the Buddha, something of the Buddha's reflection. So I don't want to get into politics. I'm not going to critique Obama. I think he's a very good president. It's a big job. But I just want to sort of present that as a starting point. Yeah? And what I'd like to do, basically I'm just going to use one sutra. A sutra is, the word is a thread, I think. It translates as thread. So there's lots of sutras and suttas from the Buddha's teaching years, which spanned 30, 35 years. So he taught after meeting the 5 disciples, as we heard last night. He taught for 30, 35 years. And what we have left from that are suttas and sutras, volumes and volumes of them. So I look at them as like they're threads from the life of the Buddha. They're threads of communication that have come down to us that we can still sort of pull and sort of in a way share in the communication of the Buddha. So what I'd like to do is just use one sutra this evening and use that just to go through it, and sort of my talk is that. And the sutra that I chose is basically a conversation. It's a conversation, you could say, or communication between a farmer called Dania, who I would say President Obama would be very pleased to have in his country. Yeah, so that's why I'm choosing Dania, because I think even though it was 2,500 years ago, I think he's really kind of a relevant sort of person, the sort of person that Obama is talking about. In a way, he represents the American dream ideal, and our ideal in many ways, or the ideal of our society. So you've got Dania. He's He's got a small holding or a large holding. He's got lots of cows. He's got a good family. It's in India and the rains are coming. So the rains in India are a big deal. They're much, much bigger than what we've had today. When the rains come in India, it's a complete deluge. Not that I've ever actually know anything about it really, but hopefully you sort of know what I mean. And Dania is in a way preparing for the rains, getting everything ready for the rains. And the Buddha appears. Yeah, so again, the Buddha probably looked pretty rough and ready, and he maybe passes Dania, and they stop to talk. The Buddha stops to talk. So the first thing that Dania says is, he says, "My rice is cooked, my milking done. I live with my people along the banks of the Mahi. My hut is roofed, my fire lit, so if you want rain, God, go ahead and rain." Yeah, so he's just beginning by just simply stating, this is my life, I'm prepared. I'm prepared for the rains to come. So you get a sense of sort of satisfaction with himself. Yeah? He's living a good life, he's satisfied with the work that he's put in. He's satisfied with what's come from that. So we might say, supper is in the oven, I've done a good day's work, I've been in contact with my friends on Facebook, I live in a nice pad by the Thames. But it's that sort of sense of satisfaction with your lot, you know what I mean, just satisfied. Okay, I've got all this and that's really good. And interestingly, when he says along the banks of the Mahi, Mahi translates as world. So you could look at Dania as being a man of the world, a man of the world, a river of the world, living in the flow of worldly experience. Okay, so this is the beginning of communication. So Dania is stating his ground, so to speak. What does the Buddha say to that? The Buddha says, "Free from anger, my stubbornness gone. I live for one night along the banks of the Mahi. My hut's roof is open, my fire out. So if you want rain, God, go ahead and rain." So this is what the Buddha says. So he says, he says free from anger. Yeah? So the Buddha is immediately talking about the mind. In a way, he's immediately contradicting Dania. Dania is talking about the worldly life. He's talking about his possessions. He's talking about material things. The Buddha is not talking about that. He's talking about the mind. He's free from stubbornness. Yeah, so I read stubbornness as, well, you're stubborn. You want the world to go a particular way. You're sort of stubborn about that. The Buddha is completely free of wanting the world to go in a particular way, completely free of that. And his hut or his body is completely open. Yeah, he's completely sort of free. His body is open. He's not physically closed. His body is open. So Dania is concerned about getting milk from the cows. The Buddha is concerned with the state of his mind. It's material cultivation versus spiritual cultivation. And yes, Dania actually slightly reminds me of Bilbo Baggins at the start of Hobbit. I don't know if you saw that before you came, but Bilbo Baggins lived in a very comfortable, pleasurable life, secure life in his tunnel kind of home. And then obviously Gandalf comes and says, well, we need to go on a journey. And he doesn't want to go. He really doesn't want to go. Okay, so Dania comes back. He says, well, no mosquitoes or gadflies are to be found. The cows range in the marshy meadow where the grasses flourish. They could stand in rain if it came. So if you want rain God, go ahead and rain. Yeah, so it sounds like a very idyllic sort of place. Yeah, probably in India, around marshy land. Maybe Vandana Jyoti would know this, but there's probably a lot of mosquitoes. I don't know what a gadfly is, but I know what a mosquito is. Nasty, yeah. So he's very pleased with the place that he's in. Yeah, he's very pleased to be there. He's got a good spot. It's an idyllic place, a very pleasant place. So he's really rejoicing in his own good fortune. What does the Buddha say? So I hope you can start to relate to Danya actually. I think he's a very relatable to man. Just start to relate to Danya. So what does the Buddha say? The Buddha says, "A raft well made has been lashed together. Having crossed over, gone to the far shore, I've subdued the flood. No need for a raft is to be found. So if you won't rain God, go ahead and rain." So what's going on here? So the Buddha's talking about, well, in a way, crossing the flood of samsara. So crossing to the further shore, it's sometimes put. So there's this great expanse of water. The Buddha says that, well, the near shore, the shore that we're on, is dangerous and fearful. Yeah, and the further shore is safe and free from fear. But there's no ferry boat, there's no bridge, there's no obvious way of getting across, and we're stuck on a fearful shore. And so what we do is we collect sticks and twigs and branches, and we build ourselves a raft, and we cross over the river, and we get to the other shore. So this is the raft that the Buddha has made. The raft is the Dharma. So the raft is the teachings of the Buddha. So the teachings of the Buddha are a means to an end. They get you across to the other side. They take you over, and then when you get there, you leave them behind. You don't carry them with you. So in a way, I think this is quite a profound sort of teaching. The Buddha is saying, well, what I'm teaching needs to be let go of. You need to use it skillfully, and then when you get there, you let go of it. The Buddha's teaching is a finger pointing to the moon. So what the Buddha is trying to point towards is this beautiful image of the moon, and he's using his finger. It's so easy to get caught up in the finger, isn't it, and talk about the finger, and talk about whether it's pointing in the right direction, or even get on the raft and then start making it comfortable, getting a chair on the raft and maybe some blankets. Sometimes it's easy to stand on this shore and just criticise the raft, just talk about how it doesn't float very well, or talk about the people on the raft who aren't steering it very well. And we can do that, can't we? Just even in meditation, we have a good meditation. We think, I think I might have made it. So it's very, very easy to kind of settle down. It's very easy to sort of settle down. And the Buddha's, although Dharni is talking about his idyllic realm that he lives in, the Buddha's not interested in that. He's not talking about that. He's interested in something much, much more profound, something much less worldly, if you like. Okay, so Dharniya, what does Dharniya say? So the conversation or the communication continues. So Dharniya says, well, my wife is compliant, not careless, is charming, has lived with me long. I hear no evil about her at all. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain. Okay, so it looks like Dani is starting to, well, it seems like Dani is starting to like quiver a bit. He's bringing in other aspects of his life, possibly in a little bit of a defence. So he's starting to bring in, I'd have said, his social standing and what people think of him. So he's talking about the outside world and how it reflects on him, isn't he? He's talking about what a good wife he's got. So we can be like that, can't we? I've got a good wife, good husband, good partner. She's really good. He's really good. And then we sort of impute that onto ourselves. That must mean, therefore, that I'm really good. I'm really well liked. I must be if I've got a good husband or a good wife. So again, Dani is still interested in worldly concerns. He's interested in what the world thinks of him. So, the Buddha, my mind is compliant. Released, has long been nurtured, well tamed. No evil is to be found in me. So if you want rain, God, go ahead and reign. So again, the Buddha's talking about his mind. He's spent his time nurturing his mind. He hasn't spent his time nurturing his wife or his husband, her husband. Yeah, so the Buddha's mind is compliant, so he comes back again to the importance of working with the mind. Yeah, I was thinking, God, Dani is so, his happiness is so dependent so far on external things, isn't it? It's like so dependent on his wife being compliant. And I was thinking, well, what happens when his wife isn't compliant? Or what happens when his wife goes off with another farmer? What's he going to do? Like, what sort of state is his mind going to be in then? And then, then he's going to get all caught up in what people think of him. And his whole identity, or a lot of his identity, is tied up in this. So I think he's in a really precarious situation, that his happiness is based very heavily upon external things. Of course, the Buddha is completely free of that. He's completely free of that. It doesn't matter what happens. The Buddha's completely free. He says, no evil is to be found in me. No evil is to be found in me. So he's using the word evil. That might sound like a strong word. But from the Buddha's perspective, the amount of sort of negativity in our minds is sort of an evil. It's a poison. Earlier last week, I got kind of shrouded in a cloud of like negativity. I found it really difficult to know what to do with it. Sort of clouded my mind. I can't remember how I got out with it. I think I just talked to someone and I forgot about it. But while I was in it, it was just like being poisoned, just like that. It was like I was poisoned. It wasn't even like I was poisoned. I was poisoned. Very, very sort of powerful force. And this, this is what goes on in our minds, isn't it? These forces of ill will and aversion and dare I say hatred. It happens in our minds. It happens in my mind. It happens in your mind. It doesn't happen in the Buddha's mind. It doesn't exist. Hatred doesn't exist in the mind of the Buddha. And yeah, I mean, I've been trying to kind of relate this back into what we call the world, like I was just, I did a little bit of surfing around on the internet and stuff like that, and like in Britain there were like nearly 650 murders last year. So that hatred is evil, isn't it? I mean, it manifests as evil. Those actions come out of hatred. So the Buddha really wants us to kind of deal with that, yeah, to see the danger in those sorts of mental states. Even the danger in what we might think are the small hatreds, the small daily hatreds, the small daily ill wills. The Buddha really wants us to be free from that, because he can see A, how dangerous it is, and B, how painful it is. So the Buddha says no evil is to be found in me, because it's a real value not to have evil, not to have hatred in your mind. I was also thinking, actually, I think one of the, well, particularly Sibford, actually, but often in such a harmonious atmosphere, and I was thinking, oh, why do I enjoy it? Why do I sort of enjoy it? And I think one of the elements is that I don't have so much hatred in my mind. I don't have that rumbling story of, oh, they shouldn't have done that, and all of that goes on. Sort of, we can be free of those stories. Another thing I was thinking of was, because I was looking at this image of Manju Gosha on the shrine today, and he's got this sword, and a sword is usually denotes violence, isn't it? Kind of splitting people in two. But you would usually use a weapon like that with a mind of fear or with a mind of hatred. And I was just thinking that you can transform that. Hatred is very kind of precise, isn't it? Very kind of precise, and you can transform that precision into trying to see things as they are, see what hatred is in your mind. Okay. So moving on. So Dania says, well, I support myself on my earnings. My sons live in harmony, free from disease. I hear no evil about them at all. So if you want to reign God, go ahead and reign. So first of all, obviously, again, Dania is happy because his sons are healthy and free from disease, and that's not going to last long, is it? So again, Dania's well-being is dependent on the health of his sons, which won't last. It's interesting this. I support myself on my earnings, and the Buddha. Well, let's say what the Buddha says in a minute. So supporting oneself on one's earnings. So often, wages seem to be a compensation for doing things we don't like. Often people don't seem to like their work. I mean, I used to work in TV, and on the face of it, it was sort of a very sort of good job in a way. But I would moan about it quite a lot. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't particularly like the culture. But I found it quite difficult to leave, partly because there was a pension scheme, and partly because every year you stayed, you got a bit more money. So it did feel, well, sort of looking back, it did feel like actually I was getting compensated. I was getting paid to do things I didn't really like, that I didn't really believe in. But the company, well, they need people. It doesn't matter if those people sort of really believe in them, they just need people. So they're willing to pay people to do jobs that they don't really want to do. Maybe I'm painting a too broad a brushstroke. But I think that was my experience working in television. And those little things like a yearly bonus or a pension scheme, they're really, they're really seductive. They're really seductive things. And again, they give you a sense of progress, they give you a sense of well-being, they give you a sense of status, they give you a sense that you're progressing in your life. A lot of the things that Obama is talking about. He's talking about these qualities. The Buddha says, "I'm in no one's employ. I wander the whole world on the reward of my awakening. No need for earnings is to be found. So if you won't reign God, go ahead and reign." So again, the Buddha's completely free. He's not tied to anyone financially. He's not caught up in having to do things for compensation. He's free to go anywhere on the reward of his awakening. Yeah, on the reward of his vision, he's completely free to go anywhere. He's not bound in any way. So, what is the Buddha actually doing here? So, what is the Buddha doing here? We're calling him a teacher, but he's not teaching Dharma a lesson. Not a lesson in the way that we usually think of teachers. When I think of a teacher, I think of sitting in a classroom learning about 1066 or Oxbow Lakes. The Buddha's not doing this. He's not teaching in that sort of way, is he? He's not simply passing on information about how to live a good life. So the Buddha had some sort of experience, it seems. The Buddha had an awakening. Yeah, the Buddha became enlightened. We don't know anything about enlightenment. We don't know anything about awakening. What the Buddha is trying to do is to communicate an experience that no one else on earth has had. He's trying to talk about something, he's trying to use concepts, he's trying to use words. Words are really sort of the medium that we need, certainly one of the mediums. So we use words, so the Buddha's simply using words, trying to find words to communicate something of an experience that no one's had. Yeah, trying to use words to give a flavour of an experience that is possible, but no one's had. So it's like, I was just thinking, well, it's like, if you were going to try to describe taking a bite out of an apple, you have to use concepts. You have to start saying, things like, well, it's sort of crunchy, it's sort of hard, it's sort of juicy. It tastes a little bit, well, what can you say it tastes like? It's very difficult to say what the taste of an apple is like. But we all know what that experience is like, don't we? To take a bite out of an apple. But how would you communicate that experience to someone who didn't know what an apple was, or never eaten an apple in their life? Very difficult to actually say what's happening, although it was a very common experience. Or again, Mike was saying, giving me an idea about talking about snow. How would you explain snow to someone who'd never seen snow before? So you could start off saying, well, it's a bit like rain, but it doesn't exactly fall like rain. It sort of falls in, doesn't fall completely vertically, and it's white. It's difficult, isn't it, to start explaining things. You've got to start saying it's a bit like this, but it's not exactly like that. It's a bit like that, but it's not exactly like that. The Buddha, the Buddha is basically the enlightened mind trying to communicate with the non-enlightened mind, using words, using concepts. So the Buddha is like he's the enlightened mind embodied. He's the personification of enlightenment. And behind his words, there was something completely inexpressible. So the reality that the Buddha has attained is profound and hard to see. And he says it's the most peaceful and superior goal of all, for the wise to experience, and it's subtle. But what is being communicated by the Buddha is beyond communication. Okay, so the Buddha's not a teacher in the usual sense. Okay, so back to Dharniya. So Dharniya says there are cows, there are young bulls, cows in calf and breeding cows, a great bull, the leader of the herd. So if you want to reign God, go ahead and reign. So he's just rejoicing in his lot, isn't he? He's just saying, look at all my animals. Look at what I've created, isn't it good? In a way, he's almost saying like he's the leader of the herd. He's sort of saying, actually, I'm at the top of this pile. I've created all these bulls and calves, and I'm in control of them all. Yeah, I'm the leader of the herd. He doesn't say that explicitly. So then this makes me think of, well, the world that we live in and our own relationship with animals and how we perceive animals. Adam's been going on nature walks this week, and, well, maybe not today, but earlier in the week, various groups of people were talking with the animals. Very, very simple, enjoyable thing to do. Just looking at animals is a very, very lovely activity, actually. Just seeing like the unique character of animals, the unique character of chickens. It's like they've got their own chickenness. Or horses. Actually, there's in Hackney City Farm. I went to Hackney City Farm a while ago, and they've got like cows and horses and donkeys and chickens and hens and stuff and geese, and they haven't got very many fences. So I've suddenly realised I was looking at all these animals in one field, and normally you see like Dharniya's sort of setup. You've just got a load of cows in one field, a load of sheep in another. I suddenly realised when I was looking at these animals in Hackney City Farm, all in one field, it was like you could really see each character because they were alongside one another. So you could see, cow consciousness because you could see it alongside chicken consciousness. But usually we don't see that because you just get like a load of cows. It's difficult to look at cows in that. But I think there is something in that because the cows that are in those fields obviously are getting ready to be eaten. People don't want you to look at the cows because basically they're going to be eaten. And I think so much of how we relate to nature is about consumption, isn't it? We sort of look at nature with our consumerist eyes so often. And yeah, I wonder if there is something about humans thinking they're at the top of the pile in terms of their relationship with animals. I wonder if that is a bit of a Christian view or a bit of a scientific view. And obviously, we're eating gorgeous vegetarian food on this retreat, and we're doing that because we don't want to cause harm. We don't want to cause harm for living beings. But we're also doing that so that we can develop empathy with living beings. When you eat something, it's very difficult to also feel empathy for it. I've relatively recently sort of almost mostly sort of been vegan for about the last 3 years, about like 90% vegan, and I have noticed my sensitivity change actually in relationship to animals and animal products. I've been avoiding buying my next pair of shoes, for example, because I really like leather shoes, or I have done for most of my life, and I'm not sure I can buy a pair of leather shoes. And I think it just comes out of a sensitivity that's developed from deciding to stop using animals purely for my consumption. And I think this is a really important point about vegetarianism, is that it's not just about diet, it's not just about non-harm, but it's also about developing empathy for life, developing empathy for living beings. So yeah, go out and have a look at the animals, and really just look at the animals, and if you're with Adam, talk to the animals. See if you can get to know animal consciousness. It's not that dissimilar to our own consciousness sometimes. Let's face it, we're often quite animalistic, and we're a bit more sort of supposedly civilised, but we've got animal consciousness, haven't we? We're not free from that realm of animal behaviour. So yeah, develop metta for animals. I don't mean get sentimental about animals, but just realise that there is consciousness there, there's life, there's living beings there, and start to extend your metta to those living beings. So there you go, the Buddha's, the Dharniya's talking about all the animals that he's reared. The Buddha says, there were no cows, no young bulls, no cows in calf or breeding cows, no great bull, no leader of the herd. So if you want to reign God, go ahead and reign. So the Buddha's just flatly contradicting Dharniya. He's completely contradicting him. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Dharniya says, I think Dharniya is really starting to get defensive. Well, he is getting defensive, there's no doubt about it. He says, the stakes are dug in, immovable. The new munja grass halters, well woven. Not even young bulls could break. So if you want to reign God, go ahead and reign. Yeah, so Dharniya's now literally talking about how he's defending his land. He's talking about stakes are being dug in, they're immovable. Okay, so what does that sort of attitude look like in the world? So just another little fact from the internet. So the UK defence budget for 2013 is £45 billion. And the US defence budget in 2010 was £689 billion. So defence costs, well, it's a big thing, isn't it? We're obviously keen on putting a lot of time and energy and money into defence. It's a worldly attitude. Yeah, it's a worldly attitude in the world. It's a worldly attitude in the mind of Dharniya, and it's a worldly attitude in our own minds. So one question would be, what is our own personal defence budget? How much time and energy and money do you put into your defence budget? And it is like we're our own little islands of defence sometimes, aren't we? We're defending ourselves against reality. So this is interesting. Dharniya doesn't seem to care what happens because he thinks he's safe. He thinks he's got it all nailed down. He's got everything sorted. He's got a good social position. He thinks he's safe, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care. The Buddha doesn't care what happens because he knows he's safe. There's nothing left to defend. Dharniya thinks that there is security in security. The Buddha knows there is only security in insecurity. Security doesn't exist. It's complete fabrication. You can't be secure. It's impossible to be secure. We are insecure. That's it. Sort of security, the whole idea of security is just pretending to be safe. We're just pretending to be safe. We're pretending to be a safe country. We want everything tied down. And more personally, we're really sort of we're so keen to protect ourselves, aren't we? So keen. I mean, you know, talking about myself as well. Okay, so a little bit about security. So the wisdom of insecurity. So it would be better to just start to realise that we're insecure. Yeah, start to allow that insecurity to be, in a way, lived and felt, rather than constantly trying to defend ourselves, because it doesn't work. It can never work. Okay, so the Buddha says, having broken my bonds like a great bull, like a great elephant tearing a rotting vine, I never again will lie in the womb. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and reign. So this is an image of, sort of destruction in a way. It seems that Dharniya's sort of view has been destroyed by the Buddha, in a sense. So the Buddha talks about having completely broken the bonds, all the bonds in his life. He's completely broken them. He's not bound to anyone or anything, not even his own body, not even his own ideas. And then what happens in the story is, it rains. I think here that water is often associated with emotion, so you could look at it like that. Water is also, thinking about rain, I think I've talked about this before at some point, but when rain comes after a long period of drought, it completely transforms. It transforms the world. Everything changes colour, you get completely new smells, the whole texture of the world is changed because of rain. So I would say that this is this point is a point of transformation. I'd also say that it's the beginning of emotion. So far Dharniya's talked clearly about his life, but now something's broken, something's given way, and an emotion comes through. And so then this makes me think of a very important point that Sangharakshita talks about us needing to find emotional equivalents for our intellectual understandings. So it's emotions that drive us. That's the driving force of our life, emotion. So when we come into contact with the Dharma, when we come into contact with the teachings of the Buddha, we need to find ways of getting our emotion behind that, getting our emotion behind ourselves. So we know, we know how to be kind, don't we? It's sort of very easy to know how to be kind, but we actually have to be kind. We actually have to kind of do it, and that doing it comes out of not just an idea, but an emotional movement. We have to want to do it. So what happens is, well, maybe I'll just read this little paragraph. So, hearing the rain god pour down, Dania said, "How great our gain that we've gazed on the Blessed One. We go to him, the one with vision for refuge. May you be our teacher, great sage. My wife and I are compliant. Let's follow the holy life under the well gone to the far shore of aging and death. Let's put an end to suffering and stress." Yeah, so Dania, he has a vision, or he sees the Buddha. A communication has happened. Dania responds emotionally to what the Buddha is. He responds to enlightenment. And then what happens is Mara, remember Mara from last week? So Mara, the personification, or the personification of the forces of darkness, let's say, he appears, and he says, "Those with children delight because of their children. Those with cattle delight because of their cows. A person's delight comes from acquisitions, since a person with no acquisitions doesn't delight." So Mara's sort of, in a way, you could say, entered the scene, and is trying to stop Dania moving towards the Buddha. He's saying, no, real delight is in all the things you've got. That's where real delight lies. Real delight lies in acquiring things. Real delight lies in having children. Real delight lies in your cattle, what you've acquired. So, sort of drawing nearish to a conclusion. But, so I was thinking about, so there's the sensory world, isn't there? So it's taking delight in the world of the senses. And so again, I looked on the internet. I just had a newspaper down there, and on the back page was there was a picture of a kind of beautiful woman from I think it's Dolce and Gabbana. That's the right pronunciation. Advert. So I went to the Dolce and Gabbana website. Because this is the world, isn't it? If we're going to talk about the world, it's this sort of thing that's in the world. It's these sorts of things that attract us. It's these sorts of acquisitions that we take delight in. Dolce, am I saying it right? Dolce and Gabbana means family, the thrill of feeling strong, a form of seduction in which men and women are bound by the duties of love and respect. This is what's on their website. So it sounds like Obama, doesn't it? It's the same sort of vision. Dolce and Gabbana is a love story, a tale of contrasts and freedom, a story of parallel opposites, different notes that turn into a unique love story. So, I mean, this is, we laugh, but they're fully serious. It's not a joke to them. And what they're trying to do, they're trying to get our emotions involved with their product. They're trying to, you know, get us behind what they're doing, their vision, their value, their acquisitions. They're trying to get us to acquire things, and we do that because we get emotionally involved. They're trying to excite our emotions. I'll just read the last one. Dolce & Gabbana fragrance announces passion. It sweeps you away as it stimulates your senses and disarms your sense of reason. So they're serious. I mean, it's mad, isn't it? It's mad. But it's a view. It's trying to excite in you a view, a desire, an emotional response. You know, and it's surrounded by pictures of beautiful people, and it is exciting. You know, you look at it, and it's alluring, isn't it? So the Buddha. What the Buddha saw, another reflection of the Buddha's, is that he just one little, very little story. The Buddha watching, there was an oil lamp at night, and he was just watching moths just flying around the flame. You know how moths, they just sort of fly into the flame. They're completely entranced by this light. And he says, it's sort of poetic, rushing headlong, missing what is essential, bringing on one new bond after another, they fall like insects into a flame, those intent on things seen and things heard. Yeah, so you know, this is what Dolce and Gabbana are trying to do. They're trying to make us just rush headlong into their world. So it's not saying, the Buddha's not saying that do away with pleasure. It's not saying that at all. Pleasure in itself is fine. We need pleasure. What the Buddha is saying is that pleasure is addictive. It does gratify us. We do get gratification from pleasure, but to only some extent. And it's dangerous because it's impermanent. Yeah, pleasure is dangerous because it's impermanent. But it's also addictive. So he's not saying no pleasure, but he's just saying there's danger and it's alluring. We get allured, we get bound. And this limits us. The Buddha, just coming to the end, the Buddha says, those with children grieve because of their children. Those with cattle grieve because of their cows. A person's grief comes from acquisitions, since a person with no acquisitions doesn't grieve. So the Buddha's talking about being completely free, being completely unbound. So what would it be like to have a mind that was unbound? What is the Buddha's mind like? So imagine you're in front of a tower, a white tower, not dissimilar to this shrine, but much bigger. And you enter the tower, and as soon as you're in the tower, the door shuts, and you're within the tower. And you see the tower as immensely vast and wide, hundreds of thousands of leagues or miles wide, as measureless as the sky, as vast as all of space, adorned with countless attributes, countless canopies and banners and jewels and garlands of pearls and gems and multicoloured streamers and jewelled nets, gold nets, strings of jewels, flowers showering, celestial garlands and streamers, all this within the tower. And also inside the tower you see hundreds of thousands of other towers, all similarly arrayed. And you see all those towers as infinitely vast as space, evenly arrayed in all directions. Yet none of the towers are mixed up with one another, each being mutually distinct. Seeing this miraculous manifestation, you are flooded with joy and bliss. Your mind is cleared of all conceptions and from all obstructions. Stripped of all delusion, you see without distortion and hear all sounds with unimpeded mindfulness. You are freed from all scattering of attention, and your intellect follows the unobstructed eye of liberation. With physical tranquility, seeing all objects without hindrance, by the power of production everywhere, you bow in all directions with your whole body.
Thank you very much, Vidyadaka. I mean, there's so much in it, isn't there? So many very, very interesting points, from Dokche and Kambana to the Tower of the Enlightened Mind, this vision at the end of the Enlightened Mind. I won't try to sum it up because there's so much in it, but I want to just go back to something he said about how the Buddha's had an experience, which that poetic description is trying to get you a sense of. The Buddha's had an experience that we haven't had, and how difficult it is to communicate that. I remember once when I was teaching, I was trying to talk about a guinea pig, and someone said, "What's a guinea pig?" You think, "Oh my God, you don't know what a guinea pig is." So you end up saying, "Well, it's a bit like a rabbit, but it hasn't got the big legs, and it's got little tiny ears, and it kind of hasn't got the long neck," and you end up creating this monster. And you can see them looking horrified. And you think, no, it doesn't look like that at all, but if that's the only thing you know, I have to use a rabbit. Yeah? And you see how that's the Buddha's relationship to us all the time. He's trying to use, everything of Buddhism is trying to be used like that. He's saying, okay, well, what have you experienced? We say, well, it's a bit like that. And then he can see you kind of getting it wrong. He said, no, not like that, a bit more like this. You see what I mean? So that the whole of Buddhism really is an attempt to try and communicate something that we haven't experienced. It's really as simple as that, like trying to tell somebody what tasting an apple feels like, or what a guinea pig looks like if they've never experienced it. And there's this lovely, I think it's probably a Zen saying, where he says that the Buddha's relation to us is a bit like a man guiding a drunk man home. And so there's the pub, and there's their house down a long, long lane, and on this lane you've got a great big ditch either side of this lane. So the sober man is saying, "Oh no, go right, go right, go right. No, go left, go left, go left. No, go." And you can see how you get confused. You think, well, just a minute ago you said go right, so surely my home is right. Now you're saying go left, and now you're saying go right again. So that's his relationship to us. We're always going to take what Buddhism says a bit literally. We're always going to get it slightly wrong. So we're always going to go either too far to the right or too far to the left. And what we're trying to do on this retreat is really learn to be guided by the Buddha so that we get home. And that means holding all the teachings of the Buddha in that kind of figurative, practical way. He knows where we're going, but we don't. We need to sort of just follow that guidance. So thank you very much for bringing the Buddha so alive for us today. So we're going to rearrange the room as usual for the puja, and then the puja will start in just a moment.
I'll put my stuff down.
Do you think I'm going to have to do it?